If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
We've got Belinda Bolsenbroek today on Horse Chats. Wonderful to get hold of her and eventually be able to talk to her. Now, Belinda is our foremost ambassador of the art of classical education, in which a historical connection between horse and rider is expressed as a true partnership. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Erin in a sec, but I just want to remind you that the values of International Horse College are horse welfare and safety. And they're the utmost importance when humans have any interaction with horses. Within our courses at International Horse College, we only utilise methods that promote safe and humane ways of interaction between horses and humans. And we only support safe methods of educating riders, handlers and trainers in all our courses. Have a look at internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Now back to the podcast. Belinda Bolsenbroek is going to also talk to us about the rehabilitation of horses and what she does within her scientific research to work with the horses and make the horses, well, better trained. You know, I mean, we can talk about straighter and classical equitation and everything else, but basically we're looking at better trained horses. Is that correct, Belinda?
Absolutely, Glenys. Thank you for having me here today with you. Yes, that is what my focus is for many years, or I have grown up in that world, actually, already in a classical background of horses, focused around education and focused around welfare. And that means welfare in effect of having a safe place and safe environment to work with horses, and also working horses in a way that enhances their life and doesn't actually harm those horses either. So a better place for horse and human. And that's probably one of the things that we have to work hardest on today, because we have so many educators out there, but not always in the best education for horse and rider anymore. So it's good to see programs like yours, and also what I've been busy with for many, many years, to see that is such an important, that the focus comes back to that important beginning of training, the foundation of everything, to take it to the highest level that someone wants to take it.
And Belinda, just going back to that, correct foundations and things like that, sometimes people are training horses, but they don't know that they're doing the wrong thing by the horse. They just don't know. Right?
No,
and just something like straightness, because I'm sure one of your focuses is on having the horse straight. So having the horse straight is going to mean equal weight on both legs. You know, they're not sort of falling in, falling out. They're actually following the line, and you're encouraging the horse to take more weight on the hind legs, which are bigger and stronger and everything, rather than the horse being on the forehand and crooked, which is not necessarily the right way for the horse to go.
Yeah.
I'd like to start my guests off by just asking them a favourite quote, you know, because sometimes a favourite quote can tell so much about a person. So if you could tell me with yours, that would be great. Yeah.
Oh, look, there's so many really good quotes out there, and I've grown up in a classical as well as in the competitive world from both sides of my parents. So I wouldn't be able to tell you one favorite, but there's one of many is, for example, Nuno Oliveira saying that the hand can only ever be as good as the seat of a rider, or that theory only gets real quality or meaning when we also have practice, that we cannot forget that we need to have a good understanding of what you just mentioned, of what is right and what is wrong, and that we don't just do things because someone said so. A local instructor said that it would be best to tie your horse with the mouth to a front leg or to the tail and create cruel practices, and to follow into such a program just because someone said so, or because that is what's always been done around you. The greatest horsemen in the world, or women, are the ones that ventured out of the comfort zone and looked for the answer. So research the truth through theory and see what that looks like in practice. So those are really important thoughts. The hands to the seat is an important one, because we have to understand that when we're training, it is an art form. It's something that you don't develop just in the first week. We can't learn to play classical guitar in the first day. I mean, I wish I could, but we can't actually learn that way. It takes theory, and it takes an implementation of theory with a balance of the right instruction to then get a real understanding. And most importantly, that with that practice becomes also important is the questioning of everything that you're asked to do. And if you are getting to train with different instructors or methods, I think a really important one for myself is never a question should be stupid enough to ask. We should always try and really understand the theory that gets brought up so that you can implement it, because intuition or talent is only integrated knowledge. So that's very important to me. Those quotes are, some of the brilliant quotes out there of many great horse masters that have gone before.
So if I read between the lines of those quotes, I love your philosophy with horses. You know, I love that, you're talking about not just building the rider, building the horse, but building the person that's going to look outside and push their comfort zone and explore a lot more. Belinda, tell me about how you first started riding.
I started riding because I grew up in a horse family. So I don't even remember when I got first put on a horse per se. Although I have to say that my mother was quite classical, and so was my father in a different way. My father comes from cavalry schooling, and my mother comes from a very classical scholar kind of education, academic education. But they were both professionals in the horses. And so I was quite lucky because I grew up with that in my daily life. My parents always had horses. They also had multiple academies in the Netherlands. They used to, in the academy of my parents growing up, they used to train the National Police Force, as an example. So I had really good quality exposure, I would say, as a young person. And I also always got, because I had quite old-fashioned parents, I was certainly not just gifted the best horses or that education just for free. They really believed in setting out that mindset, the ability to learn, to actually just let me go out and explore. So I started training my own horses at a very young age. I got a Shetland pony stallion that I had to start on the saddle when I was under 10 years old. And so I got just sent out, and I'm assuming my mom used to watch from the window to see if I wasn't going to get seriously hurt. But I was quite in self-exploration already at that age. So yeah, I started right at the beginning of life already with horses, and I've had my lifetime with horses always, ever since.
Tell us a bit more, go on from there. That's how you started, but why are you doing this professionally? Why horses and why not another career or?
Well, for me, the fascinations beside horses have always been the arts. I've also considered to go to the art academy and philosophy of the human mind. It's always been a great interest of me how the humans work. And then after that, on top of that, developing as I grew up, is an incredible interest in functional movement and well-being of rider and horses both. That's taken an incredible interest of me because, as I said, I grew up in academies of my parents. My parents were very involved in the education nationally in the Netherlands. My mother actually developed quite a number of courses on health and safety, as well as correct riding practices for the Federation of the Netherlands of Horses. And so that was very, very good. I learned from a young age that it's important to work on the independent seat, something my mother developed, seat courses, and also courses of falling off the horse without breaking bones, which was quite new at the time and very, very interesting to grow up with. And that well-being of the horses was always very important to my parents, to good classical schooling. And as I grew up in that environment, I was also going into where we often go to in the Netherlands, which is competition riding. My particular fancy, I did show jumping, I did some eventing, but was absolutely dressage because of the refinement and my interest in the arts as well. And so I became a competitive rider. I was quite successful in competition. I did well in that scene, and I was invited to go to the equipe trainer, the chef d'equipe of the Netherlands at the time. And in that time was exactly a time of training in sort of a new way. My parents were very old fashioned, and they also had all their relationships with the old masters of the time before, of the officers' schooling. As you said before, set the horse straight and ride it forward. Good education around horses, no ill practices, learning how to do things correctly and systematically, having good methods. And then I learned very quickly, venturing out of that the practices just didn't match what felt right for me. At that time, we had one of the main people in the playing field was Chef Janssen, who is now well known for the development of the low, deep, round practices that were quite damaging for the horses, overbending and overflexing the horses. Now, at that time, and you already so well mentioned that before, is that people don't harm horses because they want to harm horses. Even right at the top of the game, there is really not the intention per se to just harm the horses. It's often just because that's the way things are done. And it's get done that way because that's the way things are rewarded. And so for me, that really led to a complete turn around the corner. I stopped riding competition at the time. I actually went completely into the classical world for a while. But very quickly, I also made connections with people that worked on biomechanics of the horse, on what correct movement is. And as that already took my interest in the human science, it really took my interest in horses. And so I really started diving into what is actually correct in the classical world, in the modern world of training. What is the right way to approach things for the horse? What can the horse understand? How does it work? How does it feel good? What are the basic needs of a horse? And then why do we have so many issues in horse welfare, but also accidents in horsemanship today? And how has that come about? And so there I ventured into biomechanics and research. So, I started becoming part of a team that dissects horses. We do research into horses after there's no more quality of life of some of the animals that we get in our donations, to have a look at what happens on the inside of horses with the practices that would be used today. And that's not just in dressage and draw reins and ill practices of overuse of the whip. That's also in tying the horses to a tree to make them halter trained, or doing things that are not quite the right method in the way of the horse's brain and function, and that rush procedure to get a rider on top as quick as possible and exposes it to all sorts of accidents because we get this fragility in the relationship. And it's incredible, the story that the bodies tell, what we learn from that. And for me, incredibly important point for welfare, and also the experience of riders today to make that better.
I think too, as you progress through history, that horses were just a way to get around. It was like to get from A to B, let's get there as fast as we can. We can do it with horses. All we've got to do is catch them, saddle them up, buck them out, as they say, and then just ride them, and we can get A to B much faster. And I think as we've evolved as people, and I completely agree with everything you say, we go back to the cowboys. They had no idea. The people that were first using horses, even before that, like through history, did not know. And, we've got a lot more knowledge now about horses, about safety. It's amazing the amount of people that say that horse did that for no reason. And the horses don't do things for no reason. There's always a reason. People sometimes can't recognize the reason, but there's always a reason that horses do that. And they act a lot out of instinct. So, I think the research that you're doing, I think that all it's doing is enhancing people's knowledge about horses so that we can learn and understand a lot more about horses and make a better world for the horses.
Absolutely. And for people as well, because how many people today are not caught in an absolute fear-based routine with their horses of just managing to string by, being fragile when they take the horse on the lead into the place to tack up, trying to stay out of the way of a biting mouth to get the girth on, getting on the horse as quick as possible, and then being absolutely fragile. But the instructor yells that they must canter around that corner. And so they hang on for dear life. All these things are so unnecessary when we actually have a good foundation at the beginning of the training of a human to be a horse person. That's really important. The first thing that we must learn is, how do they work? What are the basic needs for a horse? If we have the basic needs sorted out, then we need to have some good help and also a good understanding that, because at this day and age, everything is available to us. So we also have just the incredible, fortunate situation that people can fall in love with the idea of horse riding. And, how many times do we not have situations where a person then gets their first horse absolutely unsuitable for a beginner rider, and then the disaster goes from there. And it's just these kind of things to have these things let back into, because there was a time before the time that we lost a lot of the knowledge. There was a time very early on, like in the times that we had close warfare on horses, that we actually had horse people that understood. I mean, the Romans, they used to sleep with their horses in the same building. They were living every day and breathing everything with the horse. So they were horsemen through and through because they grew up with it. But most people today don't have that luck. They don't have that experience. So they just have to go on what someone tells them. And so somewhere there's the urge to be with the big animal. But on the other hand, there is also an underlying fear. And that would be incredible. I cannot imagine what it would be like to be uncertain of what it is that the animal actually wants of you or what they don't want, or a personalized view of rejection that people often feel with horses that is not at all in the mind of the horse. Like, horses don't work like that at all. But there's so much things that are just a little bit unsure for people that work with horses. And the foundation is everything of that introduction to the right place. And where I really fit in that sense is that for me, my students are mostly people that have already ventured down a long path of horsemanship, of work with horses, that are coaches, educators, also amateur riders, but people that have often gone a whole trajectory of problems and that then venture into another way to find deeper understanding. And because one of my specialties is rehabilitation of horses, that's where that understanding comes in, because people are dealing with injury in horses, which is usually related to not quite the right riding practices, not quite the right management of the horses, never intended. And those kind of things can really be detrimental. And people cannot relate necessarily that a suspensory ligament injury could be due to an ill-fitting saddle. And so with the research that I do and the things that I base knowledge on, this is what I bring forward the most, together with my students that are coaching out there, the ambassadors for the horses, I call the student group, is that we actually bring that knowledge. It's by far the most important thing that we can do today, is to bring solid knowledge and education to find the way back.
Belinda, just going back and talking about, the professionals and careers with horses, and even the non-professionals and, the stewards of the horse, like people who are wanting to learn more. What sort of, like, horse knowledge aside, right? Because if they're the right person, they're going to be able to move forward and gain that knowledge. But character-wise, what sort of character traits do you think a person would have, and the sort of person who's going to then go on and keep going and persevere? And just tell me a little bit more about what you feel the character traits of a good horse person are.
The character traits of a good human being, because that is really what horses bring us, isn't it? If we look at the classical interpretation of equestrianism, the old way to the horse, like that for centuries and centuries people have written about, it's the well-rounded education of a horseman is the well-rounded education of, in the old days, a nobleman, or in today's age, a good human being. We need patience and we need perseverance. We need reflection. That is the things that we need to become a good horse person. And then we need drive. We need consistency. So for that, we need some resilience. And I think that's an important quality to have as a human being, to not call it quits or throw the towel in the ring, but to continuously move forward in your knowledge, in your understanding, to always search for the next level, for a higher level of quality of your experience and that of the horse. Those are the ingredients that people need, in my opinion, to be fantastic with horses. And because of that, they're usually people that are also really good at life and do other really great things in the world too, because really it's exactly the same ingredients to a well-rounded human being. And I think everything starts with patience.
Lovely to think, patience, that's just what all people should have. Resilience, that's what people should have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. Now, are there any particular horses? You've told us about your first Shetland stallion that you bought, but any others in particular that you'd like to say, this is the horse that I learned the most from, or this is the horse that I was, able to bring from here to there?
I would say for me, and I know that sounds a little bit, in some way a little bit vague, but I truly mean it, that every horse that I get to be a guardian for is important and has taught me so much. And not just my own horses, but the horses of my students and the students themselves. Like, I spent a long, long time, really all my adult life as a coach. And I learn so much every time still from every horse that comes on a research table, that I get to have the incredible gift to look on the inside of what has been in that horse's life. And of course, then there are the special ones that have been my special, like my own horses, that I've been able to be on the journey with them. That's just enhanced my understanding so much. I've had a stallion that I imported from Denmark, who broke his neck in the transport coming to Australia as a youngster. And that would normally be something detrimental. There would not be a way forward out of that. And yet I have been able to educate that horse to the highest level, like to Grand Prix level of training in dressage, and to the highest level with the airs above the ground, like that we see in the high school training. And that's an incredible journey to take on a young stallion that's so fragile, that's so broken. And it's taught me more than anything, patience, and that everything was always for the horse, but never for me. And that's something that you learn. For me, I have had to learn with horses like that, with severe disabilities and injuries, that it no longer becomes a way of just, sharing a journey. When I was in my competition days, it's like, I was also still immature in the beginning of that. I was a teenager at the beginning of that point, and I would be, if it wasn't first place, it was never good enough. And you have the immaturity to have to deal with growing up with rejection or disappointment or just the success stories as well when you have a good enough horse. But to then be able to not have the horse as a tool to achieve something, but to have the horse just to have as a horse. I wasn't going to quit on the stallion after importing him. He was very close to me, in the way that I came about him. And so he was someone that I would have spent all that time on. And to be able to then still take it to those highest levels of education. But every day was a day for him, and not for just me to prove a point or those are incredible journeys. And that was on a physical level. I've had a number of, one of my ways into that rehabilitation has been with rehabilitating dangerous or really ruined stallions that found it really difficult to manage life after, not quite the right approach and treatment of what we've discussed before, particularly breeding stallions, and to bring them back to a place where they've experienced so much that would lead to distrust and aggressive or dangerous behavior, to come to a place of re-socializing horses that have been left to live in absolute isolation for most of their adult life as a stallion, to bring them back into a place where they can be in a herd or at least have a friend and to have a social life with mares and babies around and manage their life well through that, to be also a horse that you can take out that can wait quietly to do what we're going to do. Those are incredible stories for me that I've been gifted by my horses, my own horses. And the discovery of that brings it back into a place where I've been able to share that and then bring that to students as well. It's an incredible journey.
Belinda, just to do with, you were talking before about another trainer who was very keen on the deep and round, but your passion is, I want to train my horse classically. I don't want any of the modern methods. Have there been people who have made it difficult for you to be strong in your training methods and what you want?
I think that, again, it's also the part of what we said about developing as a good horseman or woman or a human being, is that rejection is always around, like, particularly if you take the steps off the beaten path. Like, for me, I grew up in a place where I was very directly led to be the direction of performance riding, the thing that everyone looks at. We've just had the Olympics, dressage, that, people look at and aspire to, and to step away from that field, from that direction, of course, comes with a lot of frowns or rejection or misunderstanding of people. For me, also in the training and education, I will always stick true to my ethics, and that it's for the welfare of the horse. So if I have also let go of people that might have served me well in some way of exposure or recognition at times where I chose not to take a path like that because it wasn't right in my belief system, and vice versa of that. Therefore, also I can certainly see moments where I've been frowned upon or condemned to be difficult or a certain way. And rejection is never a nice thing to deal with. Like, it's always tricky to be misunderstood when you're trying to do the right thing. But that's life. And I'm quite comfortable with that. I've had many people say to me, at a time when I was also in my work in Europe with horses and training people, I've had, people also say to me that maybe as a woman in that time, in a very male orientated, right at the top there, the instructors have usually been male, that then as a woman, it would have been difficult for me to hold my ground of some sort. And to have people make those kind of statements, it actually always just makes me laugh a little bit, because I've never felt in that way disadvantaged or misunderstood. I've of course felt misunderstood, but I can usually see why that is a misunderstanding. And I think that's the drive to make it even better. I also tend to not be that much personally orientated, but rather on the goal that I have in mind to actually bring that knowledge out. So I'm not shy about sharing my knowledge and my findings in my own students, but also in the wider community. And sometimes that means that, I might not get the recognition of something in particular, and that would be like, that's a rejection in some way, but I'm okay with that. So yes, it's always a difficult journey, as it is a bit of the path of, conventional training, but it's therefore also more interesting. And life is like that, right? It's a challenge in a way, and it makes it also much more fun and interesting. So I'm quite happy with the challenge. I'm okay.
You talked about Oliveira and his methods, and following his methods, and your mother. Is there anyone else that that you'd like to mention here that you think I owe a lot of my knowledge to that person?
There are many people that I would owe knowledge to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that in this moment, or for a long time already, I've always chosen to walk my own path in that way. So although I would say that the biggest, for the most, I owe my parents, because they came from both the classical world and a competitive world, and they created me as an individual and to be reflective. So I've trained and worked with many people. Nuno Oliveira has been an influence from my mother's side, as is Egon van Nijndorf, Podhatsky. Those are the classical masters of the time. My father was very much in line with Steinbrecht and the education of the German officer schooling of Warendorf. And those are very important influences as well. I'm a big reader. I've grown up with all the classical works of Sönig and Lot and all the French equitation as well. Being from Europe, I've had that education of the French style and the German style, and of course the Dutch modern style, which I didn't like. But even to the people that I didn't like, I've learned a lot. I think that it is important to say that for people to learn, also look at the things that you don't immediately like or you don't understand, because it's often there where you find like the piece of gold in your education. And if it is only of what you don't want to do, then that's also great. For people that I work together with that I see are a great influence also out in the world, making a better place for horses, is Gert Huisman, who first made me reflect on the classical compared to the modern training. And at that time, I had taken a direct turn from the competitive schooling. I'd been a competition rider, an international competition rider, and I actually had taken a direct turn into the classical world. And that meant also letting go of all purpose of riding other than riding for the art of riding. And then I had a beautiful conversation with Gert, and he said, well, but in this way, this is what I see in the horses that's lacking. And it made me reflect. It was a real turning point for me in a friendship-like conversation of true reflection. I admire people like Gert Huisman or Egon van Eindorf or the people that will do what's right, even when it's uncomfortable, is really, really important to me. And they're great examples to keep going, and also to be open-minded, that you could be wrong when you are being an academic mind. And then it means that you have to reflect on that and make the change and be able to own it and still keep open-minded for new influences. That is one thing that I really admire in the people out there. So, yeah, I think those people.
So I really enjoyed talking to you, Belinda. I think, I enjoyed your first quote, talking about that. But as we've traveled through the conversation, I just think, wow, these philosophies that you had, I'd certainly love to get you back and, go a little bit deeper, saying, just talking about comparing the French method and the German method and, things like this that we can go into a lot more depth in. But just, what are you looking forward to now? What does your future hold?
The education, further education of, and helping the people that I work with to be ambassadors for the horse and to provide them with continuous knowledge of also backing up that it's not just what I think it's right, it's what we know is right because we do the research, to keep connecting to the people in the world that I believe are also doing the right things. That is, for me, it keeps things going and it really creates the positive change. And then as it is really tying in, we've just finished the dressage of the Olympics, is that we show, not just talk about what we see is wrong, but to show what is actually right. And so that's why I've also come back to Australia, to Karoi. I've traveled over the last years and I've been a coach for a very long time now. I've done worldwide clinics for many, many years. And it's time to go back to the origin for me, to actually have time to ride my own horses and bring them out and show, together with the team of the coaches and people I've educated that are close to me, to show what is the right examples of training in harmony and balance. That's the next step, definitely, for me to take on too.
Now, if people would like to contact you, you've got a website. I think it's Belinda Bolsenbroek Academy. And if people aren't sure, just go to horsechats.com, do a search for, if you can't spell Bolsenbroek, don't worry about it, because it took me a little while. Well, just go and search for Belinda and you'll find that information on her page at Horse Chats. And then that'll have contact details as well. But it's belindabolsenbroek.academy. Is that the best website to contact you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That would be, that's the place to find me. Otherwise, you can also find me on social media under the same name. Belinda Bolsenbroek Academy is where you'll find me, and you can find what I'm doing.
Belinda, just for lessons, you're at Karoi. Do you take students within a program, lessons, if people are like in Victoria and they'd like to have a group of people to get you down for a group clinic or something? Are you able to do that or not? Or
Absolutely. So I've done that for my whole adult life, is that I do clinics. So they're 2-day courses that I go and travel out to and educate people. And from that, I have in most places in Australia, I have what we call the master classes, where we have a combination of people that are already for long term in my education, under my education, and some public clinics as well. So I do public clinics, and for people to come to Karoi, one of the things that we're setting up is also the ability with educated horses to come and experience that kind of education on well-trained horses. For that, people do have to sort of be serious riders and be on a level of competence, of course, as well, because it's not just a open riding school in that sense. But people will be able to find all that information on the website as well.
And what about phone number, email, Belinda? Not that people will probably, I hope they're not driving along and pulling over, but that'll the same things. We'll put those details on the bottom of your page at Horse Chats. So horsechats.com, search for Belinda, and at the bottom of the page will be the phone number and email. Can you just go through them now, just in case someone's listening and ready to write this down?
Absolutely. So if someone would like a little bit more personal contact, it's belinda@belindabolsenbroek.academy. That's the email address. And then one of my team members will be in touch for anyone that wants to have an opportunity for some clinics or something like that. Or otherwise, you'll be able to find multiple numbers actually on the website on the different coordinators in different areas as well. So you should be able to reach out on any of those. Thank you.
Okay, we will talk to you again soon, Belinda. It's been great catching up with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Janice. Thank you for the opportunities.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.